Mahzarin Banaji in the Department of Psychology, Richard Clarke Cabot Professor of Social Ethics. B.F. Skinner is, I would say, the 20th century's preeminent psychologist. And I say that given the comparison of Freud, who many people might regard to be the much more prominent person. But to scientific psychologists, those who work in labs like I do, there is no question, there is no contest, it is B.F. Skinner. He started at Harvard early in his career. He was a graduate student here. He went away to the Midwest for 20 years, and he came back in 1948 and remained here until his death. His main contribution was twofold. First, in the form of an idea, the idea being that if psychology is to be a science, it cannot study anything that's not directly observable. So Skinner didn't deny the existence of the mind, but he really believed that if you wanted to be a real scientist, that you would never try to study the mind because that was a black box. You couldn't directly perceive it. What you could see directly was behavior. And this is the most important sort of concept that he came up with and designed equipment, boxes, recording equipment, to measure an animal's responses in the face of something called reinforcement. So the idea is a very simple one. If I want to increase some behavior in you, let's say a positive behavior like helping, what I need to do is make sure that I give you a reinforcer every time you do that behavior. A smile might be enough, a cookie maybe. He broke this important concept of how do we change people's behaviors, how do we shape them? And he was a true, I would say, American psychologist. He believed very much that who you came all wired up to be was much less important than what the world could do to you and shape you. Before Skinner, psychology relied on something called the method of introspection. You asked people to think about things and then talk about them. And what J.B. Watson, who influenced Skinner, and what Skinner did is to create a complete departure from that. And they said, there is no place in science for asking people questions and having them just tell us what's in their head. We have to measure. We have to measure this stuff so that we know objectively, with the increase in number of reinforcing pellets that you give a rat, what is the exact shift in behavior. And it was that precision and the focus on objectivity that they brought to our science that has shaped it, I would say, in forever. And just as with any good idea, there are again newer good ideas that come and take their place, and that of course happened to Skinner. He was quite unhappy with the way in which psychology turned later in his life, where most of us are indeed cognitive psychologists now. In one sense or another, we study the mind. We're interested in how our brains work, how our minds work. We believe that, like Skinner, we have objective techniques to do that. So we're not introspectionists like the original psychologists were, but we no longer are like Skinner in the sense that we don't believe that we can't actually try to understand the mind in and of itself.